All right. Well, this morning we're continuing with the idea of vision, and we're glad that you are here this morning, and that we're reasonably warm, and that we have a vision, and maybe your vision of lunch is already set, like we talked about last week. We're quickly nearing the end of January. I looked at the date and went, "Oh my goodness, January is almost over," and it happens every year. Okay, but I was still a little surprised that it's the 21st, and we're only one more Sunday away from February. And what we started talking about last week was we asked the church to participate in the vision process, because it's not my vision that should be the church's vision. It's not my vision of what the ministries of the church are. It's about the vision of the church. And so we all participate in that. And as I mentioned, my role as pastor is as a facilitator and a guide, because I'm not expecting to go anywhere for a while. And so far, only one place has wanted to kick me out, and that was really short-lived, so it really can go long. But no, not really that either. The idea is that we have the option of looking for God's vision, or we don't really have a direct path of where to head. And we do some things in ministry, and none of those are a problem. And some people, this is sort of like asking people to come to a work day at church, and they're not always pleased that there's a work day, and so we hadn't had many of those because the response has not been really poor. Have not been really great. But oddly, what I also find is not everybody is suited to taking care of some of the repair things or things. And I understand sometimes they don't feel suited to certain tasks, but people also don't seem really excited about being involved in work with the church, which is where we were also talking about last week about our one. My vision of the big picture was I just want what God wants, and that's what I try to pass on to y'all. But Jesus gives us one particular direction, and that is to make disciples. And so that's the work of the church, is to make disciples. It's not the church work day, although that is important work within the church. It is, but it's the most important is to do the things that Jesus, in rare occasions, gives us direct instruction to do. So at this point, or last week's point, I talked about we were sort of in an autopilot for ministry, because it's like we've been doing the same things the past couple of years I've been here, and they work, and they do good things, and we'll probably mention that a little more. We do these things, and it blesses people with both physical needs. Occasionally there's a connection to spiritual needs, and inside the church we do a lot of things for spiritual needs. So those are there. But if you think about it, there are certain things that we assign. There are certain days we do community kitchen. So we know once a month, I think that's what it is. Someone have to remind me. I've only attended that once. So once a month is potentially something we do for community kitchen, and others do it a little more. And then we have other times, like Backpack Buddies. There's a certain number of kids that we help every other month. Is the way that goes. And so those two tasks have been going on for several years, and they are definitely important ministries in the church. We also do some other things that are not necessarily pop-up, but they're sort of automatic. There's the shoebox ministry, and that touches children all around, and most of them are maybe distant from here. Some are in the U.S. and some are in foreign places. And so that's sort of an automatic. We know it's on our radar. It's something we're going to do. I think we've done the coat thing before. I don't remember it happening last year, but it probably did. So and that's good. All of these things are excellent things, but we normally help about the same number of people. We do the same number of things. And the most important thing to point out is while they're good, they're also handled by almost the same number of people every time. So there are those who will support something, and they know they're going to support it. They decide how much they'll give to it or how much time they can give it. And then we also just know that if we decide, we have the choice of deciding not to support something as well. And God gives us free will. So it's not really whether we're deciding, it's whether it's something we should do. Something we're supposed to do. Something that we desire to do, because we'll also receive benefit. We used to do a lot of other things. We have a lot of intentional ministries. We have other things like, ladies, we call it the Women's Bible Study. We may revamp that name. It may be Sunday School. The Women's Sunday School may turn into a little broader, where men are welcome and they're not shunned when they come in. So, but as we talked about that, as we've been talking about the early ministry things, is that we probably go back to finding an adult Sunday school format so that it's available, and people, it wouldn't be like, well, that's the ladies' study. So, but that's something we do, and that group takes care of each other as part of their study. Is they also, and they take care of other people in this church. They visit, they go places, they go when someone has need. So it's a very vital internal ministry of the church. And then we have the Wednesday night study, which has been going on long before I came, and the topics change, and the opportunities are there every Wednesday. And it's also the de facto small prayer group for our church. It has two ministries. One is the education of those who decide to attend, who decide they want to be there, and they study, and so the teachers prepare. In this case, mostly George prepares, and the lesson is put together. And then before the group breaks up, there is always the prayer for the needs of the church, whether it's raised in this meeting or things that come to George or other people along the way, other desires of the heart. And that's an important internal ministry that people get involved in our church. And anybody can pray for our church, and we welcome that as well. At this point, I guess, as a church, we pretty much, though, do about the same thing, involving pretty much the same people, that invest their time and talents to support the ministries of the church. I guess what happens is people try to make safe choices, and that's what makes some of our ministries automatic. We know it works. We know these things happen. We know the value of prayer. We know the Bible studies help us and encourage us, and we can learn things, and we can share with each other, and we can share the things going on in our lives in a safe space. So these are all good things, but they are technically spiritual autopilot, because we're not really looking to see if they can be made better or bigger or new things. We're not really consulting God about what we've been doing. I hope we consulted God as we elected our leadership. I hope we've consulted God in a lot of ways as we go along in the things. What happens when we're in spiritual autopilot? We're working under our abilities, our power, our plan, sometimes even our resources. So spiritual autopilot is a Christian life that is lived by our decision and our abilities. I don't know, living as a good Christian and probably as a good church, well, it's not really that good if we're living by the way of knowing our limitations. It's not, if we're not listening to God, if we aren't progressing, if we aren't looking at opportunities, if we're not, a lot of times we can be surprised because we think we know God wants us to take care of this or that, and so it can be a surprise thing. If our life is lived by the plan and not being able to listen and witness God saying something to us, sometimes in small, surprising ways, sometimes in big, then we're not really being successful as an individual Christian, or we're not really being successful as a church. And I wonder, is it because we fear success? Do we not listen to God because we fear success? Is it because we fear that we'll fail God? That's probably more likely. Maybe it's that we really don't see the needs around us. Is that the reason that we don't try to go to God more often? Because I know that if you really look at the world, if you just watch the news, I don't know about you, but I have trouble watching any news broadcast, even if it's the Weather Channel, when I don't say, Lord, these people are getting it. They're getting whacked right now. And we know people are losing their lives, whether it's traffic or freezing. And then even when we think about how cold it is here in my secular work, we were going around and talking to the shelters, and we were arranging for extra cots and extra blankets. And I realized that even in that time, I'm trying my best to do what I can humanly do, but I have to raise up the people that would agree to come in to a safer environment, because only God can encourage them to move to a point where they can be helped and assisted. And there are people in our community that, and there's only, I didn't know how small it was, it's still big, but they estimate it's 25 people are 100% homeless, and they live under the bridges, and they won't go anywhere for anything. They occasionally will come like the community kitchen for a meal, and they'll eat and leave real quick, and they, I don't know if it's mental illness, I don't know if it's a choice, I do know that they exist. So last week I asked folks to intentionally try to listen to God. And I'm hoping, I forgot to actually look on the table. There should be these little forms. I know there's some over there on that small table. They just have 3 things to help you think about what God has done for you and for our church. And then it talks about and I ask you to take time with this, and I actually shorten the time down a lot because I think it takes longer to prepare yourself to even give yourself honest answers. And then the next part was to say, I called it the maybe part, which was maybe God told me to tell you all this, because we're doing a visioning process, and sometimes people get uncomfortable in that because they don't think they can speak for God. Unfortunately, if you're avoiding, then you're not listening to God, because as a child of God, you are expected to give information about God away, about Jesus away. So you can speak for God in all kinds of situations. Now, usually it's not condemnation of someone that's done wrong as much as encouragement that they can have their life back. So maybe they're worried about this visioning thing and what we ought to be doing. Maybe it's because we're afraid that everything we could possibly do together would only amount to a grain of sand on Panama City Beach, Florida. That's a valid concern. We're not a big, giant, powerful church. Even the big, powerful, big churches might be 10 or 12 grains of sand. Okay, it's not about, with God, it's not about the amount of sand or the amount of ministry you're doing, as long as you are doing what God is asking you to do. And that's the point of our visioning, is that we accurately find out what God wants us to do. And I'm not sure any one person can have that perfect vision. That's the reason, as the church, we're called to share the vision God gives us. And the only way we know the vision is to listen. I don't know about y'all, but listening's hard. Listening to Renee is hard. I have to work at it. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. She will tell you that she'll be talking and say, "You're not listening to me at all, are you?" And I'm driving along somewhere or something, and I'm not. And then when I try, and I do try to listen for God, I find that to be one of the hardest things to do because He talks really soft. I've yet to have God really yell at me. I felt like perhaps He yelled at me. If we're listening to the small voice, it takes time, it takes effort. And it's hard to invest that much time sometimes, but let's say you try to follow my little simple directions, encouragements here. Hopefully it'll work, or maybe what you'll actually find is that it encourages you to make your own way of listening to God, because I don't know about you, but I've got lots of questions for God in my life. Should I be doing this? Believe me, there's always more opportunities than I can ever take care of. My load of sand seems big, but my ability to do something with a load of sand seems really tiny. And that's true. It can be discouraging. So I'm left with, what does God want me to do? And I go back to that one instruction from Jesus, is to make disciples. Okay, if you really look through the Scriptures and you try to find the way God speaks to you and the kind of things He's going to encourage, you're going to find the answers are very, very short. What am I supposed to do for you? Make disciples. Now, it's very vague on how to make disciples, but it gives you the big picture. So this morning we're also trying to decide if we've been listening, and you're going to see that sheet probably one more time. I know you're going to see the handout about the 2 sessions another time, so I'm sure you'll have the opportunity. So if you changed your mind about what God was whispering to you because you got one last week, we're going to still give us both of them, okay? But we're not looking for really long answers, but the group, our ministry group, is going to call through these, and if you'll give us your name, that's great. We may not call you if we think we understand, but if we don't understand, we'd like to know what what was the exact word. Maybe with me, it's the handwriting. What did you write? Okay, so if you want to give it, that's fine. If not, we'll do the best we can. And that's what the groups will work on that Saturday morning when we have breakfast. They're going to take the culmination of putting these together into sort of a list, and then that's what the groups are going to talk about. Here's what the church thinks. Here's like the 99 people said this. Well, we didn't have 99, but 10% of the people said this, 20% of the people said that, and we're trying to find the way to pick the best priorities and what God puts on our heart. So that's what the gist of visioning is getting the whole church to listen for God. I have a guy, I've read some of his stuff, I've listened to some of his books, and you may have seen, like, Father Brown Mysteries. He was an author, he's a theologian. He says a lot of deep things, and one of the things that he points out about the Christian life, he says, the Christian ideal has not been tried and found wanting, It has been found difficult and untried. Okay, that's G.K. Chesterton. He's from back in the post-World War II era, and very, very verbose and talented and wise man. Also very sharp, and when you read it, you'll realize you are being convicted. He was into deep stuff, and visioning is a deep subject. It has to be an intentional subject, because listening is something you do intentionally. I don't know, have y'all ever, and some of you, I know you have you ever had a small child in your lap and you can't quite hear what they're saying because they're really, they're whispering? Okay, our granddaughter's not talking. We just enjoy the coo sounds, and so we're not having to try to understand what she's saying now. I know when she's mad. I heard that yesterday. We went for a visit. I know when she's happy. I know she loves to see her dogs, because they come over and they see her, and she is not intimidated by these gigantic dogs that scares my dog to death, because they're her family. But I have had children get in my lap and they want something and they whisper something, and I have to say, "What'd you say? What'd you say?" When we have to sit and wait and listen for God and to be focused, it is a hard task. It is an intentional task that you have to say, "I'm going to take my half hour, my hour, and I'm going to try this, and I'm going to try it more than once probably. And then I hope you will fill out the form and give it back so that we can sort of see what popped into your head." And there's some instructions there about sometimes it's, we don't need your grocery list, but it might be some other vision thing or something you don't know exactly what it means, but you said, "This is sort of clear to me. I'm going to write that down on my sheet." So don't hold back on what you give us. We'd be glad to have it. I don't know, sometimes with God's help, if that's what it takes to clarify the vision. See, God has a vision for our community right around us, has a vision for our family, has a vision for our world. And even sometimes in our family, the vision, or the things that we can see wrong when we look at how sometimes the family is living, is so big we don't know how we deal with it. And when you start thinking about it on the God level, it's even harder to figure out how we will deal with it. The problem with receiving a vision from God is the first thing we will do is we'll notice the problems that are involved in what God has given us. I was talking with Linda, and I actually probably refer to this again. It's like when you walk into a room and you flip on the light, and the first thing you see is the mess that needs to be cleaned up, or they didn't clean up the kitchen before you went out, and now you know that the mess is there. But until you turn on the light, you might have forgotten about it. But the other thing about the light, when you're doing a vision with God, is, the first thing you're going to see are the problems and the things that need to be changed or touched or loved or done. But you're also going to receive, if you're patient enough, you're going to receive God's resolution to what you see. And some of those resolutions are going to be bigger than you can ever imagine, but that's the reason the church has to share it, and that's the reason all of Christianity has to share in certain things, because God uses not just Chapel Hill United Methodist Church, God uses His children all around the world. And believe me, some people have bigger cultural problems than we have. They have huge problems in other countries. So when we share the ideas, we share the vision back with the church. And some people are good at sharing what they think the church should do, and sometimes it's been prayed about. They bring the ideas to the board meeting, or they bring the ideas to a small group of whether it's the women's Sunday school or the Bible study, and people talk about it. Bringing back what God is laying on your heart is an important thing, and we just need to be intentional on doing that, not just for the visioning time, but all year long. So we share this vision, and we share it with the church, and we share the problems. And sometimes sometimes I can look at something and feel like it's from God, and all I see is the problem. Sometimes it takes someone else that not only sees the problem, but they see God's solution. So that's why we want to share. And so maybe you only have a solution in your mind. You just write, "Well, we ought to be doing this," and it might be the answer to a problem somebody else brings up. We'll see what happens with this visioning process. So our scripture this morning is actually from Matthew 5. And it's real common, and most people know this scripture. So it's, "You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let the light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Sounds like some instructions from Jesus in that little brief thing. Because it's Jesus making the statements, this description. So it's about who a Christian is now. Last week we talked about a little bit, how did you get where we are now, and can you see that? And how did your past influence who you are? And even as a Christian, in this case, Jesus tells us what Christians, it's what we are, not what we should be, and not what, maybe not even what we could have been. He says that we are the light of the world. Now, this seems rather vague, but the light of the world, light of the world, that's a pretty big subject in itself. He doesn't indicate how the light of the world does this action as an individual or as a church. I don't know, a church is a gathering of our individual lights, okay? The light is that we live as a Christian, we live a Christ-centered life. If Christ is not at the center, and that's not influencing us, if that's not where our light comes from, then we're not quite there. We're not missing anything. God is still around, and God is still encouraging. At some point, when we accept Jesus for ourselves and we become a child of God, then we have this light. Now, nobody's ever said I glow, but people have said they see something. They say you pray good. They might be. They just say nice things sometimes, and I think I babble about. Renee will tell you I ramble sometimes, and she does ask me to do the short prayers when we go to a restaurant and pray. She doesn't want me to do the 20-minute prayer. She wants if I get to 3 minutes, I'm going to get kicked, okay? She wants to pray for the food, pray for our kids. That's it, okay? So, but being a light to the world, it seems intangible. How can we do it? How can we shine? It's not about what we do that we shine. It's about who we already are. As a Christian, we can hide it to some degree, but as a Christian who's living as a person who understands Jesus is doing and has done some things for them, we shine, or we show it in some way. As a Christian, and it's not just one Christian, it's all of us. You may say, my light's not very bright. Jesus didn't say, he basically says, you, as talking to the followers, talking about the believers, you are a light to the world. So you have the light in. Now, you may feel like you're dim or bright, and I started to do a whole light bulb joke that I find funny, but it's really old, so I decided I would skip it today, about being bright or dim or blown or whatever. It's not everybody but me that has light. It's not everybody but you that has light. Jesus says, you, as in his followers, his believers, are light of the world. Now, I don't know about you, but you go around and you turn on your porch light at your house and leave it on. You may leave your porch light on all night. I bet you have a reason you decided you leave that porch light on every night. I don't know what your reason would be. In our case, we have automatic lights, so they come on and go off and come on and go. So every time the cat goes by, the lights come on out. So, but it's there to give us light when we drive up at night. That's our primary reason, and we live so far out in the country, it only confuses the raccoons. Okay, so the idea is I have a reason for that. We still have a hall light in our hall that we leave on all night because we live in a 2-story house and we use a really efficient little bulb, and so that's there. We have a lot of reasons to have little lights in our house. We have a lot of things that glow. I don't know, y'all probably do too. Little lights, little red lights and green lights and things on different things that you know where you're looking when you look in a particular direction if it happens to be dark. According to Jesus, we're not supposed to turn off the light as an intentional act. It's supposed to be used not just for you, but for everybody around you. So we don't try to save the light. Jesus tells us, not only do we take this light and we turn it on for everybody's benefit, but we put it up on a stand so everybody really gets benefited. Light bounces off the walls, and you don't cover it up with a bowl, or depending on your translation, a basket. You don't take it away and hide the light. I guess it's he's explaining the obvious. Everybody knew you didn't waste an oil lamp and cover it up so nobody could see it, and hide its intended purpose. It's common sense. It tells us that we put the light up high, we make it visible, allow it to be visible, instead of just the fact that there is a light, and to try and take comfort somehow that there is a light. As for the church, if we take that analogy, I think it's cool that Jesus talks about a church on a hill and our name is we're on a hill. He's not really writing directly about us, except that we are the church, the body of Christ in this place. But I don't take the description of cannot be hidden to be something that's a fact because the hill's so high. I take it that it's cannot is the instruction. You cannot hide the light. It's not going to be so obvious. We do, as free will people, we do have control. So the church light is to be lifted up to the world. We lift up Jesus to the world one way or another. Most people know that's our mission, that we give Jesus away the best we can. And it is He that is visible through us. So He is the center of our life choices. I don't know. I sort of wonder, at this point, is the light shining that I'm giving off this morning, is it making you a little uncomfortable? Is it revealing things that you just shouldn't be hidden, like choices or deciding what you participate in and don't participate in? I know that every time I write a sermon, just so you know, every time I write a sermon, I'm writing to me, and y'all listen in. And sometimes that means that we all have similar problems and similar things about our choices. So what happens is with this light is it does reveal problems. I don't know. At our house, it's going to reveal a little bit of dust on the table, maybe a lot of dust on the table. It's going to reveal dirt in the corners of the room where it didn't get swept up right. If we have the light out and we sweep, or we have the light dim and we sweep, then we really don't get it all. Sometimes there's spots on the carpet. There are things that we prefer people not to particularly see, or choices that we prefer to ignore, because anytime God's light is revealed, then there's usually something that we're supposed to respond to, whether it's on a personal basis or in the case of our study right now is for the church in general. So we're going to notice the problems, and the harder part is making sure that we understand that it is also revealing the resolution. The resolution requires us doing something. Not always huge, giant things, but something. And then Jesus, at the end of our reading this morning, says, in the same way, so it's put your light on a light stand, is we're supposed to let our light shine before others. Again, we're not hiding the light. We're also not reserving the light for only the few. We don't do the light for only inside the church building and those who will come here. Our light is to be to the world around us. So from our hill vantage point, there's people driving by, there are people coming, going. The light is something to be noticed. I brought a few flashlights in this morning because I got a bunch of flashlights. Now, I got really bright, obnoxious flashlights, so I'm not really pointed at you. I'm going to put it somewhere else. I'm going to leave it on there. I have these. I use these a lot. These are those little power packs. And so the light, this will last for hours. In fact, it may last for days. So there are all kinds of lights. I don't want to burn anybody's eyes. I have flashlights that I use when I'm on the road, and I have to get somebody's attention in a big way because I'm parked there to keep them from driving over the giant power lines that are arcing down the road. So I'm out there flying, shining my light. So I have some really bright lights that would turn some people off. In fact, they're intended not to have them approach me. They're supposed to turn around and go the other way. And then I have other lights that are convenient for reading in the truck or when I'm out someplace. Or I have these pocket flashlights. I have a couple of these I keep in my bag because I always can never find something in my bag. And I have to have a little light just to help me for the moment. And so this one's not real bright, but it's a light that I have. And so I use it. In our bedroom, by the bed, I have another flashlight. I don't know how long I've had the flashlight. 5 or 6 years. It didn't work real well when I got it, but I've never changed the batteries in it. And I use it when I need to see something. I know the normal paths in my house. I can go to the bathroom and I can go to the closet. And so when I get up on Sunday mornings really early as I do, I don't really have to use the flashlight. But sometimes I'm looking for which shoes I'm putting on because I will be known to bring in 2 different shoes. So I have to get the light. Now the light is bright enough that it helps me to see the ground. So the light that I have that's ancient has a couple little cheapy LEDs, probably a $2 flashlight, is there, and it works. Every time I push the little button, it has a momentary button on it, so I can push and go, oh, there's the two shoes that go in a set. Or sometimes it's supposed to be not bright enough to bother her now. But if she happens to be awake because I'm stumbling around like the person I am, she'll see the light. She'll say, "What are you looking for?" Okay, it's not the bright light like that big one over there or the one that lasts a long time, but she will see me moving around knowing I'm looking for something. It might be keys, it might be something I really need. And usually I hate that I woke her up in the first place because I leave pretty early. The idea is I do have a light that helps me, and then if I needed to, or it also lets me be noticed. It doesn't have to be very light in a dark room to be noticed. We changed a lot of the exit lights in the other building, and I didn't realize how many of our little halls over there were totally dark because none of the lights worked. The exit lights weren't working. Well, now you know where every doorway in the building over there is because those little LED lights are on. They're on all the time, and you have no question about if you're just walking out at night, you walk straight to the door. There's no problem because there is not really a beacon, but there's a light to give me direction. Our church gives us this light that Jesus describes for a purpose. And we're not supposed to keep it hidden down deep in a bag. We're not supposed to keep it put in our pocket. We're not supposed to leave it over by the bedside. It's something that's supposed to be with us all the time. And it shines from us, whatever we're doing. And we might not even be immediately thinking of God and doing something holy and precious work. It's just that it is who we are as a Christian, as a child of God. Folks, this church has been used for 25 years to do ministry and to be a light. And one of the things I know about a light, we used to do foreign mission trips, and some of y'all here have been on those foreign mission trips, and that's a light to the world. Our people went out and we came back, and it was short-term missions, and we enjoyed it, and we had a great time. We came back more exhausted than we ever would have imagined, and when we got there, we thought we were taking Jesus to the people, but usually we found that Jesus was already there, and he just encouraged us when we got there, and we did our mission of the task in the building or whatever we're doing. We've also, and there may be more than this, I was just trying to name in my head, I know that at least 4 people in the earlier days of this church went out into ministry from this church. Keith Windmiller was the first one, and he's still in ministry and serving, and he's in full-time ministry. And then I went away, and Norv Havens went out, and Paula Edney went out. Now, y'all may be able to throw somebody else out. That's what you call sending light into the world. You take someone who was coming to church and was in the choir and doing their thing, and then God says, okay, that person's going to go away now. And that is something this church is integral and involved in. And no matter how much, I can tell you, most of us left during the time of early pressures within the church and financial things that have continued on. But as things go on, God will send people out because they understand. And in my case, I understood things about ministry that a lot of people that thought I'm going to go serve a church, and don't realize every church you go to has problems, has issues, has needs. Every church you go to may have a special need that the person you sent can take care of for a while or encourage. Our church has been a beacon to children. There are children whose lives were made better, who were welcome here, who were taken care of here when their parents didn't come or couldn't come. There are children who have a better life even today because we were involved in some small way, the fact that we gave them a place to be. Whenever we talk about vision, I don't know, maybe a lot of you here haven't done camp stoves or kerosene lamps. Every now and then you have to trim the wick and some of these things before the light can be efficient and bright. Our visioning process is a time when we agree we're going to get together and we're going to trim the wick and we're going to fill it with the oil it needs. We're going to take the time to see what God's vision, what His heart is for His church up on this hill. Now, every church we have a similar vision. We all have one mission, to make disciples, but we may have different ways of doing it. So the Scripture isn't real descriptive about here's how you do this being the light thing. We are just to do what's natural, which is to be the light and to shine. We join together, and then we renew our connection to God and God's visioning process. Now that's sort of scary, because sometimes He's talking to you personally. I don't know about you, when He's talking to me personally, sometimes I'm really overwhelmed by the fact I know something's wrong, I don't know how to solve it. And other times it is for us to share not just that individual vision, but also little things that may not seem to be anything but a puzzle to us with the bigger group. Yeah, what we're really listening for is to see what God sees in us. What God sees in us. Because sometimes we don't have a clue. All we see are the limits. All we see are the problems. And God sees what He intends for us to do and to be. And how we can make a difference. How we can make our grain of sand difference on His beach. He doesn't ask us to fill the whole beach. He asks us to do what He calls us to do. You get the fact that all He does is help us to identify the problems, give us the ability to see the opportunities. And the most amazing thing is that He sees in us what we could never imagine for ourselves sometimes. With His help, we also can see what we're capable of. It's His power, His wealth, His encouragement, His love, His mercy, His grace. I think of it as more as a mirror. If I think of it as a light bulb, I think, well, I can burn out. My batteries can go dead. I need to save this energy, this excitement. No, it's more like we are reflecting this light than it's originating within us. It's His light. You are the light to the world. The church on a hill cannot be hidden. All glory be to God. Now, you don't have to move yet. I just need to remind people. Real simple. Fill it out. Fill out what you're comfortable with. Give us if you pray, give us just a minute of that vision. If it's just a word, more baptisms. I don't know, anything, whatever God relates to your heart. It might be church growth. It might be, well, we need more people. Well, that's a little simplistic. But put down what God reveals to you, because that's what the vision is about. And then we'll try as a group to figure out what it really means and what our passion should be. And then we can watch great expectation about God working through us because we're trying our best. All right, I'll let y'all